Right now, somewhere in the world, thousands of people are hearing a sound that doesn't exist. Not hallucinating, not imagining it, hearing something real, persistent, and completely unexplained. A low, droning hum that never stops. No source, no pattern anyone can fully pin down. And for the people who hear it, it has ruined sleep, relationships, and in some documented cases, sanity itself. It's called the hum. And after decades of investigation, nobody can tell you with total certainty what it actually is. Let's start with where this gets strange. In 1970, residents of Bristol, England, began reporting a persistent, low-frequency droning sound. Not loud, not dramatic, just constant, like a diesel engine idling somewhere just out of sight. Except there was no engine, no factory, no machine anyone could locate. The sound was there at night, mostly, quieter during the day, when ambient noise from traffic and daily life masked it. But once the world went still, it returned, relentless, for the people who could hear it.
And only some people could hear it. That's the detail that made authorities suspicious for years. If a sound exists, doesn't everyone hear it equally? By the 1990s, similar reports had surfaced in Taos, New Mexico, then Largs, Scotland, then Windsor, Ontario, where the case became one of the most thoroughly investigated in modern history. Starting in 2011, residents of Windsor began filing thousands of formal complaints about a persistent hum disrupting their sleep. The Canadian government eventually funded a full scientific investigation led by researchers at the University of Windsor. They deployed sophisticated acoustic monitoring equipment across the city, recording continuously for months. What they found was revealing, but not in the way anyone expected.
The investigation, led by acoustics researcher Dr. Colin Novak, traced a significant portion of the sound to industrial activity on Zug Island, a heavily industrialized site across the river in Michigan. Specifically, blast furnace operations were identified as a likely contributor, low-frequency noise traveling for miles across water, where sound, unlike on land, faces far less resistance and can travel exceptional distances with minimal energy loss. This seemed like a clean answer. Industrial noise, explainable, traceable, solvable. Except it didn't explain everything. Because the hum had been reported decades before Zug Island's blast furnaces existed in their current form. And it had been reported in places with no comparable industrial source anywhere nearby. Rural England, remote parts of New Mexico, locations where there was, by every measurable account, nothing producing a sound at all. So if it's not always industrial noise, what else could it be?
This is where the investigation gets genuinely strange, because multiple, very different explanations have each captured a piece of the puzzle, without any single one accounting for all of it. One leading theory points not outward, but inward, toward the human ear itself. Audiologist Dr. David Baguley, who has spent decades researching tinnitus, has proposed that a portion of hum reports may be a specific form of low-frequency tinnitus, a perceived sound generated internally by the auditory system rather than an external source at all. Tinnitus is famously difficult to diagnose, precisely because it's subjective. There's no external sound wave for a microphone to pick up, which would explain why so many investigations using sensitive recording equipment have failed to capture anything matching what hearers describe. But this theory has an obvious problem. Tinnitus, in its classic form, is typically experienced as a high-pitched ringing, not a low, droning hum. And clusters of hum reports, concentrated geographically in specific towns, are difficult to explain through a purely internal individual cause. Tinnitus doesn't usually cluster by zip code, unless something external is triggering it.
This leads to a second theory, centered on infrasound. Sound frequencies below 20 Hz, generally below the threshold of conscious human hearing. Geophysicist David Deming, who has studied hum phenomena extensively, has pointed to several potential infrasound sources: distant industrial machinery, wind interacting with infrastructure, ocean wave activity translating into low-frequency seismic vibration, even microseismic activity from tectonic movement deep underground. The unsettling part is that infrasound doesn't behave like normal sound. It can travel enormous distances with minimal loss of energy, passing through walls, buildings, and terrain with little resistance. And critically, some research suggests infrasound exposure, even at levels below conscious detection, can produce physiological effects, subtle vibrations sensed by the body rather than heard by the ear, sometimes triggering genuine psychological distress, even when the person has no idea why. In other words, you might not be hearing the hum in the way you think. You might be feeling it, and your brain might be interpreting that physical sensation as sound.
This would help explain something else deeply strange about hum reports. Many describe sensing pressure in their ears or skull alongside the sound, a detail consistent with infrasound exposure, not typical hearing. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Multiple independent research teams across different countries have measured background infrasound levels in hum-affected areas and found nothing unusual. No anomalous spike in low-frequency activity that would explain what residents were reporting. Which brings us to the most unsettling possibility of all, that for at least some sufferers, there may be no external sound, no internal tinnitus, and no infrasound trigger. Just an unexplained neurological phenomenon, possibly related to heightened attention itself. Psychologist Dr. James Henry, who has studied auditory perception extensively, notes that the human brain is remarkably good at detecting patterns, and equally good at fixating on them once detected. Once someone notices a faint hum, conscious attention can amplify the perception dramatically, making a barely perceptible sound feel inescapable, even as objective measurements show nothing has changed. This doesn't mean the hum is fake. The distress experienced by sufferers is completely real, measurable in disrupted sleep, elevated stress hormones, and documented declines in quality of life. What it means is that the explanation might not be singular at all.
The hum may not be one phenomenon. It may be many different phenomena. Industrial noise in some cases, tinnitus in others, infrasound in still others, and in a subset of cases, something closer to a perceptual trap our own attention sets for us, all producing remarkably similar reports, because human auditory perception only has so many ways to describe a low droning sound I can't escape. Which means the most honest answer to what the hum actually is might be this: we've been asking the wrong question. Not what is causing the hum, but how many different things are being mistaken for the same thing. And until acoustic science, neuroscience, and audiology fully untangle that question, somewhere right now, in a quiet room, someone is lying awake, listening to a sound that, by every official measurement, isn't supposed to be there at all.